Well, great. Thanks for being on here today. We've got Chris Petrucelli, head women's soccer coach at SMU, Southern Methodist University. Thrilled to have you here. Obviously, you've been coaching for a long, long time. You've most recently been with the women's under-18 national team. And I know you've been with University of Texas and Notre Dame, and that's where you won a national championship. So, again, we're thrilled to have you and appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Good, good. Well, a lot of people are, obviously concerned in this pandemic and this crisis, and as far as it goes to recruiting. And I've just laid out a bunch of questions and like to get your thoughts.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Well, what do you think players should be doing to stay physically and technically active, during the social distancing period?
Yeah, certainly there are challenges, and it's it's more difficult. But I think there are a couple of things that players should be thinking about. First of all, you have to have the motivation, right? You have to be motivated to do it. Where before you had training and it was like, okay, I got to go. I've got training. Well, now you have to self-motivate and come up with set aside times where you're going to train. So being in a routine is really important. Having a routine that includes training, I think, is an important piece of this. And then you have to look at, I think, a couple of different areas. One, you have to keep yourself physically fit, and you have to try to keep your technique sharp. So to keep fit, there's so many different things you can do, and it's great what's going on right now. If you get on the internet, you can find workouts. You can find people doing live workouts. Different gyms that are putting out routines and things like that. But there's a lot of things you can do with just your body weight, weights and things like that to keep yourself fit. So I think there are great resources out there, and I think a lot of like with our team, we're making videos and showing them videos and doing things like that. So there's the physical piece, and then there's the technical piece, right? And how do you keep yourself sharp on the soccer side when you're not going training every day? And it's actually a good time for you to maybe work on some of your weaknesses or some of the things that you might want to improve. But if you have yourself and a ball, there's a lot of things you can do. And it's even better if you can find maybe a wall or a curb, out in front of your house, someplace where you can hit the ball and have it returned to you. So now you can practice all kinds of different striking of the ball, left foot, right foot, hitting the ball, getting some spin on the ball, some side spin, striking the ball with your instep. Also, again, with a wall, hitting a ball so it pops back up, and now you're taking the ball down off of out of the air, things like that. So, I mean, really, you can get creative in all kinds of different ways. We're seeing a lot of people, working a lot just with the ball and juggling and dribbling and things like that, which are all good things. And these are things that, are really good for players to work on all of the time. But now it's about all we have. And I think if you commit yourself to, an hour a day of some physical conditioning and an hour a day of some technique, you'll find you'll make big gains over this time period.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, what recommendations do you have for players to stay active on either the tactical or mental side?
Yeah, and maybe a little bit more difficult because you're gonna have to put some research into it. But first, watch some games, right? And you can go online and you can find all kinds of different games and old games, obviously, because no one's playing right now. But go watch some games and watch the games with the idea of what's happening in the game. Don't watch the game for the enjoyment of soccer or for the love of the game. Watch the game trying to figure out, okay, what are the systems like? Where are they pressing? Um, what's happening with the back four? In my position, what are players in my position doing? Right? Are the wingers tucking in, or are the wingers staying wide? These different kind of things that would be based on your position. So I think watching the game is important. And then again, there are tons of resources online. Um, you know, different websites that have articles about tactics and matchups and things like that. And it takes a little bit of research, but there's so much information out there. So it's really, watching and reading are the two things I think that are most important.
Good. Thank you. Talk to us about the dead period that the NCAA has instituted, during this COVID-19 outbreak. What does a dead period entail?
So the dead period has now been extended to the end of May. And a dead period basically means that we as coaches can't go out to watch games, and we can't have people on campus. We can't meet with people on campus. Most of our campuses are closed anyway, but we can't do that. So that's where it really comes into play. We still can email and make phone calls and things like that to players who are the right age. But it does prevent us from having sort of the in-person evaluation and contact with players. The other thing that was part of that was the NCAA put in a little bit of a ban on signing players to letters of intent, which will be up here in a day or two. I think it's the 15th of April. As of the 15th of April, we will be then allowed to sign players again. But until then, we can't. So that was another piece of the legislation that was put in.
Okay, but certainly players can send emails, and if they're a 20 or 2021, they can get responses.
Yeah, they can, and again, phone calls as well with those players are allowed. So a dead period. It sounds like everything is shut down, but it really isn't. It's just this sort of the in-person kind of things that are shut down.
Okay. Overall, with the situation that we're in and everybody's stuck at home, how does this change the landscape for recruiting? We've got a lot of 2021s and 2022 grads that coaches didn't get to see them play with all the games that were canceled this spring.
Yeah, I think it certainly, it's going to have an impact and has had an impact for sure. The number of events that have been canceled, number of these recruiting opportunities are gone now. But look, for if we sort of take it by year, the 2020s, which I think there probably still may be some 2020s out there who haven't quite decided yet. Those players probably need to be pretty proactive as to contacting schools and trying to find a place for themselves. The 2021s, I would say the same. I think that there's still opportunity out there for 2021s. I know that there are some places that have sort of moved past the class and are looking at the 22s now, but there are opportunities for 2021s. And I think that group, one of the things that you have to do is you got to get some video. You got to have some video of yourself playing, and you got to get that in front of coaches. And coaches will look at it. And it's never too late if you're a good player and you're a good fit for a university. As a coach, you're just trying to get the best players you can find. You don't care when you get them or where they come from or anything like that. So, when video comes across our desk, especially during this time period, we're taking a real long look at it, right? We, in the past, we may have looked at it and gone, yeah, okay, well, we can go see this player play and that kind of thing. Well, there's some situations now where maybe you don't have that opportunity. So you really do have to look at the video. So I think it's important to have, a good amount of video available for coaches to see.
A question I get quite often is, what would you like to see in video? Do you want clips? Do you want full games? What would you
That's,
prefer?
well, I like them both. Now, I like to get a video that's sort of a highlight video that has some clips, and um, typically if I get that, and I like it to be shorter rather than longer. Um, but typically, if I get that and I like what I see, that will then spur me to say, "Hey, I'd like to see a game. I'd like to see, how it looks in a real game." So I think having both is important.
Okay, great. So with the cancellation of all these showcases and tournaments, how do you feel, you know, how do you feel college coaches will handle these uncommitted players?
Yeah. So again, the 20s and the 21s are sort of the ones that maybe are affected the most. The 22s, um, I think we're going to get started up here at some point, hopefully in June, and we're not allowed to call or write to the 22s until June 15th
Right.
anyway. So those guys have time. It's the 20s and 21s, I think, that are impacted most. And so as college coaches, what are we doing? Well, one, we're looking at everything that comes to us closely, right? We're looking at every email. We're looking at every video. We're looking at every letter from coaches or every email from coaches, and we're communicating a good deal with club coaches, on players. If we see something we're immediately contacting club coaches, and then we're contacting players. But marketing yourself is pretty important for that group.
Okay. I believe you touched on this a little bit, but with the NCAA rules, can you just go over again the differences for, those 2022 players? You said they
Yeah.
can't get contacted yet. Can you just touch on that?
Yeah. So the 2022s, there's really nothing we can do at this point. I think besides sending, you know, a camp brochure or questionnaire or that sort of thing. Other than that, we really can't do anything until June 15th, which is when we can start calling and emailing and things like that. Even now, conversations with club coaches are really limited as to what we can even say to club coaches, other than the fact that we can say, yeah, that's somebody we'd have some interest in. Um, we can't even say things like, yeah, that's somebody we're going to offer a scholarship to when the time comes around or anything like that. We're not allowed to make those kind of comments even. So for the 2022s, the big day that it all starts really is June 15th. That's when a lot of the correspondence will be coming. That's when the phone calls will be coming. And I think during this time, this June, July, August time period, will be a really important time for that 2022 group, for coaches to get to see them, for players to communicate with coaches. I think, given the landscape right now, I think a lot of camps and things like that have, ID camps have been canceled in
Right.
April and May and June probably. But I think you'll probably see some of these things pop up in, July and August and September. I think those will be important things for players. So this 2022 class is you know it's the calm before the storm. The storm's coming, and it'll start the 15th of June.
Okay. So that's leading into their junior year, the summer of June
Correct.
15th before their junior year.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
Okay, great. Well, what recommendations would you give for all these club players in regards to getting attention um, from the college coaches specifically in this time period? Because this is unprecedented.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, push yourself on people. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid you know, to pick up the phone and call, um, to get things in front of coaches. Don't be afraid to push your club coaches to make calls for you. Um, get online and do your homework. Look at, you know, the universities, and how you match up with those colleges and universities. Look at the team rosters, the style of play. You know, you can even get online these days and watch games of some teams to figure out if you fit in. But you know, if you want to make yourself, if you want to get noticed, if you want people to know about you, then you have to be proactive. You have to email and call, and you know, all these kind of things. The correspondence is really important to get your name out there.
Fantastic. Well, that's kind of marketing themselves and pushing themselves to get your attention. In general, what advice would you give for a youth soccer player, just in general, that someone who that aspires to play in college?
Yeah. So look, there's a big jump from, you know, from the club game, um, you know, from being a 17-year-old playing club soccer to jumping into the college game, right? You jump into the college game, and now, you know, you're playing against players that are 22 or 23 years old who have been in full-time professional training the last 4 or 5 years. And while you're, you know, most situations training is pretty good that players are in, it's just not the same. You know, it's just not the same. So that jump is big, and to prepare yourself for that jump, um, there are a number of things that, you know, that you really should be thinking about. One, the speed of play changes, so you got to be able to play quickly, right? And you gotta find ways to play quickly. How can you play quickly? One, your technique has to be really good, right? And we've talked some about, you know, how you can improve your technique, right? And the things that you can do, but you got to be training on your own, you know. So let's put ourselves beyond this time period. Just going to training a couple of times a week with your team isn't enough. You know, you got to get out and train on your own. So your technique improves. That gives you a little bit more time on the ball. And then the other piece is physically the game is different. The game is faster. You know, the players are bigger, stronger, and faster. So you got to continue to improve yourself physically. And we've talked some about that as well. But, you know, the conditioning piece of it is important. The strength and speed and things like that, those are important pieces. So, you know, there's this sort of whole big picture that you have to look at, and trying to improve yourself in all of these areas, I think is an important piece of it. And you have to think that, you know, where you are right now probably isn't good enough. You know, that would be for 99% of the players out there around the country. 99% of the players that are playing club soccer right now, where they're at the moment, probably isn't good enough. You know, they have to continue to get better. They have to continue to improve. And if you do that, you start making these gains, you just give yourself a better chance.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time and spending a little bit with us. Again, Chris Petrucelli, SMU. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right,
Stay
Derek.
well, stay healthy, stay safe. Thanks again.
Okay. All right. Good luck to you guys.
Thank you.